The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 47 star systems in the past decade. Their gray-skinned warriors stood 9 feet tall, their technology could level mountains, and their interrogation methods had broken every species they'd encountered. Until today. Staff Sergeant Marcus Tank Rodriguez had been many things in his 32 years. A farm boy from Texas, a high school football star, a United States Marine who'd served 3 tours in the worst hellholes Earth had to offer. But he'd never been a prisoner of war to an alien empire. The ambush had come without warning. Rodriguez's reconnaissance team was mapping the mineral-rich moons of Kepler 442b when the Zephyrian ships dropped out of hyperspace. His team fought well. They always did. Marines don't surrender easily, and the 2nd Reconnaissance Battalion had a reputation for being especially stubborn. But plasma cannons against kinetic rifles was like bringing knives to a nuclear war. Thompson died first, his body vaporized by a direct hit. Chen lasted longer, using his sniper training to pick off 3 Zephyrian soldiers before their return fire found him. Williams fought hand-to-hand with a 9-foot alien warrior, actually managing to snap the creature's neck before 5 more overwhelmed him. Rodriguez was the last one standing, his ammunition spent, his armor cracked, blood running down his face from a dozen cuts. When the aliens finally took him down with some kind of neural stunner, he was still trying to reload his sidearm. He woke up in a cell that looked like something from a nightmare. The walls were a dull metallic gray that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols pulsed along the ceiling in patterns that hurt to look at. The air tasted of copper and ozone, and every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. But Rodriguez had been through worse. Paris Island had taught him that pain was temporary. His drill instructors had screamed in his face for months, and he'd learned that the human mind could endure almost anything if it refused to break. The Taliban had captured him once in Afghanistan, held him for 3 days before his unit found him. He'd come home with scars, but he'd come home whole. This would be different. The first Zephyrian to enter his cell moved with the fluid grace of a predator. Its gray skin was marked with intricate tattoos that shifted color as it walked. Its eyes were solid black, like looking into deep space, and when it spoke, its voice came from a translator device around its neck. "I am Interrogator Prime Vex-High," the alien said, its words precise and emotionless. "You are designated as Human Specimen 774. Your species has been classified as primitive but persistent. We require information about your military installations, your population centers, and your defensive capabilities." Rodriguez looked up at the creature from his position on the floor. His wrists were shackled with some kind of energy restraints that burned whenever he moved. His uniform was torn and bloodied, but his eyes were clear and steady. "Rodriguez Marcus, Staff Sergeant United States Marine Corps, service number 2847-4829-6671. Vex-High tilted its head, a gesture that somehow managed to convey both curiosity and contempt. "Your designation means nothing here, human. You will provide the information we require, or you will experience pain beyond your species' capacity to endure. Rodriguez Marcus, Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, service number 2847-4829-6671. The interrogation began immediately. Vex-High had devices that Rodriguez couldn't even name, neural disruptors that felt like lightning coursing through his brain. Cellular degradation fields that aged his skin decades in minutes, then reversed the process. Memory extraction probes that dug into his thoughts like red-hot needles. Hours passed, then days. Rodriguez lost track of time in the windowless cell where the lights never dimmed and the pain never stopped. His body was broken and rebuilt a dozen times. His mind was invaded, dissected, torn apart, and forced back together. Through it all, he gave them nothing but his name, rank, and service number. The Zephyrians had interrogated thousands of prisoners from dozens of species. They had charts and graphs showing the exact point where each species would break. Humans, according to their projections, should have lasted perhaps 6 hours under their methods. Rodriguez lasted 6 days. On the 7th day, HFY brought new tools, devices that didn't just cause pain, but seemed to reach into Rodriguez's soul and twist it. The Marine's body convulsed as alien technology attacked his nervous system directly, sending signals of agony that no human brain was designed to process. But still, he gave them nothing. "Remarkable," HFY said, studying readouts on a handheld device. "Your neural pathways are adapting to our techniques. Most fascinating. Your species shows an unusual capacity for psychological resilience." Rodriguez spat blood onto the floor. His voice was hoarse from screaming, but his words were clear. "Rodriguez Marcus, Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. Service number 2847-4829-6671. HFY leaned closer, its black eyes reflecting the pulsing lights of the torture devices. "Tell me, human, what drives this stubbornness? Your government cannot possibly value one soldier's life over the strategic information you possess. Your species is primitive, your technology inferior. Why do you endure this suffering for nothing?" For the first time in days, Rodriguez smiled. It was a broken, bloody smile, but it was genuine. "You wouldn't understand, you gray-skinned piece of shit. Marines don't break, ever." The next 3 days were the worst. HFY abandoned all restraint, using techniques that had been banned even by Zephyrian standards. Rodriguez's body was pushed past every limit. His heart stopped twice and was restarted. His brain activity flatlined for 17 minutes before emergency procedures brought him back, but he never broke. On the 10th day, HFY made a decision that would haunt the Zephyrian Empire for generations. If the human couldn't be broken, he could be made an example. The entire base would watch as the stubborn Marine finally died, and the recording would be sent to every human world as a demonstration of Zephyrian power. They strapped Rodriguez to a device that looked like a cross between an operating table and an electric chair. Dozens of alien officers gathered in the chamber, their black eyes fixed on the broken human who had defied their empire for 10 days. "Any final words, human?" HFY asked. Rodriguez lifted his head with tremendous effort. His body was ruined, his voice barely a whisper, but his eyes still burned with unquenchable fire. "Semper Fi," he said. HFY activated the device. Energy coursed through Rodriguez's body, designed to cause maximum pain while ensuring a slow death. The Marine's body arched against the restraints, his muscles convulsing as alien technology tore him apart from the inside. But something was wrong. The readings on HFY's instruments were fluctuating wildly. The energy patterns were shifting in ways that made no sense. And Rodriguez, instead of screaming, was laughing. It wasn't the laugh of a broken mind. It was the laugh of someone who knew something the Zephyrians didn't. The laughter stopped when Rodriguez's heart finally gave out. The monitors flatlined. His body went limp. After 10 days of torture that would have killed any other known species in hours, the human was finally dead. HFY checked the readings twice, then 3 times. Dead. Completely, utterly dead. Brain function ceased, cardiac activity stopped, cellular degradation beginning. The stubborn human was finished. "Dispose of the corpse," HFY ordered. "Prepare the recording for transmission to human territories. Let them see what happens to those who defy the Empire." 2 Zephyrian soldiers approached the table to remove Rodriguez's body. The first one was reaching for the restraints when Rodriguez's eyes snapped open. The soldier stumbled backward, chittering in alarm. Dead humans didn't open their eyes. Dead anything didn't open its eyes. Rodriguez sat up slowly, the energy restraints snapping like tissue paper. His wounds were healing as the aliens watched, flesh knitting itself back together with impossible speed. The burn marks from the torture devices faded like smoke, his broken bones straightened and mended. But it was his eyes that made the Zephyrians step back in terror. They weren't human anymore. They glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to pulse with each heartbeat. "That was refreshing," Rodriguez said, his voice completely steady now. "Thanks for the wake-up call." Vexhai raised a weapon, its hands shaking. "Impossible. You were dead, completely dead." Rodriguez stood up, stretching like a man who'd just taken a pleasant nap. "Death's funny thing," he said conversationally. "For most folks, it's an ending. For Marines, it's just a change of assignment." The chamber erupted in chaos. Alarms began blaring as Zephyrian soldiers opened fire with everything they had. Plasma bolts, energy beams, projectile weapons, even personal force fields turned into weapons. The air filled with deadly energy and the acrid smell of ozone. When the smoke cleared, Rodriguez was still standing in the same spot. His uniform was completely undamaged. His skin showed no marks from the weapons that should have vaporized him. He looked around the chamber with mild interest, as if he'd just walked into a museum. "My turn," he said. Rodriguez moved like lightning, but lightning that could think and plan. His fist connected with the first soldier's chest, and the 9-foot alien flew across the chamber hard enough to dent the reinforced wall. He spun and caught another warrior's plasma rifle, crushing the barrel with his bare hands before driving his elbow through the alien's skull. The Zephyrians were warriors, trained from birth to fight and kill. They had conquered dozens of worlds and slaughtered millions. But they had never faced anything like this. Rodriguez moved through them like a force of nature, every movement precise and deadly. Their weapons couldn't touch him. Their armor crumpled like paper under his attacks. In less than 2 minutes, every alien in the chamber was dead except Vexhai. The Interrogator Prime was pressed against the far wall, its black eyes wide with something the Zephyrian Empire had never experienced before. Absolute terror. Rodriguez walked over slowly, his glowing eyes fixed on the creature that had tortured him for 10 days. When he spoke, his voice was calm and conversational. "You know what the funny thing is?" he said. "I really was just a regular Marine when you captured me. Tough as nails, sure, but nothing special. Just a guy from Texas who loved his country and his corps." He reached out and grabbed Vexhai by the throat, lifting the 9-foot alien off the ground with one hand. "But you had to keep pushing, didn't you? Had to see how much a human could take. Had to find our breaking point." Rodriguez's grip tightened. "Well, congratulations. You found it." What are you?" Vexhai whispered. Rodriguez smiled, and for a moment, the blue glow in his eyes flared brighter. "I'm what happens when you kill a United States Marine. I'm what humanity becomes when you push us past the point of death itself. I'm your worst nightmare, and I'm just getting started." He released Vexhai, letting the alien drop to the floor. "Run," he said quietly. "Tell your empire what you've seen here. Tell them that Marcus Rodriguez is coming, and he's bringing some friends." Vexhai scrambled to its feet and fled, its claws clicking on the metal floor as it ran. Rodriguez watched it go, then looked around the chamber at the carnage he'd created. For 10 days, the Zephyrian Empire had tortured him. They had broken his body, invaded his mind, and finally killed him. They had thought they were demonstrating their superiority over the human race. Instead, they had just made the biggest mistake in the history of their civilization. Rodriguez walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. Behind him, the lights flickered and went out one by one, as if the base itself was recoiling from what it had witnessed. 40 minutes after his death, Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez walked out of his cell as something far more dangerous than any Marine the galaxy had ever seen. The Zephyrian Empire had wanted to know about human resilience. They were about to get a very thorough education. The escape from the detention level should have been impossible. 23 floors of reinforced corridors, automated defenses, and enough firepower to level a city block. The Zephyrian military complex on Zerion Prime was considered the most secure facility in the Empire, designed to hold the most dangerous prisoners from across the galaxy. Rodriguez walked through it like he was taking a stroll through a park. The first security checkpoint erupted in sparks when he approached. The energy barriers that could stop an assault shuttle simply flickered out of existence. The automated turrets swiveled toward him, their targeting systems locking on, but their plasma cannons refused to fire. Every piece of technology in his vicinity seemed to malfunction or shut down entirely. "Security breach on detention level 7, a voice echoed through the corridors in the Zephyrian language. "All units respond. Priority 1 threat." Rodriguez understood every word, though he'd never learned their language. That was new. Everything was new now. He could feel the electrical patterns in the walls, sense the data flowing through their networks, hear conversations happening floors above him. The base's artificial intelligence was screaming warnings that no one wanted to believe. A squad of Zephyrian shock troopers rounded the corner, their power armor gleaming under the harsh lights. These weren't the regular soldiers from the interrogation chamber. These were elite warriors, veterans of a dozen campaigns, equipped with weapons that could punch holes through tank armor. Rodriguez stopped walking and looked at them calmly. "You boys should probably turn around and walk away." The squad leader raised his plasma rifle. "Surrender immediately, or we will—" Rodriguez was standing in front of him before the alien could finish the sentence. The squad leader looked down to see a human hand wrapped around the barrel of his weapon. The reinforced polymer began to glow cherry red under Rodriguez's grip. "I tried to be polite," Rodriguez said. The plasma rifle exploded in a shower of sparks and molten metal. The squad leader's armor crumpled as Rodriguez's other hand closed around his throat. The remaining soldiers opened fire, their weapons unleashing enough energy to melt solid steel. Rodriguez didn't even flinch. The plasma bolts struck some kind of invisible barrier around him, dispersing harmlessly into light and heat. He moved through the squad like death itself, each movement precise and economical. Armor that could withstand missile strikes cracked under his touch. Weapons that had conquered star systems became scrap metal in his hands. When it was over, Rodriguez continued walking down the corridor, stepping over the twisted remains of what had been the Empire's finest warriors. Behind him, emergency lights bathed the carnage in hellish red. He found the base's communication center on the 15th floor. The Zephyrian technicians inside were frantically trying to send a warning to the fleet, their clawed fingers dancing over holographic controls that sparked and failed whenever Rodriguez drew near. "Don't stop on my account," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "I want you to tell them I'm coming." The lead technician, a young Zephyrian female with intricate tattoos covering her arms, turned to face him. Unlike the soldiers, she didn't reach for a weapon. Her black eyes showed fear, but also something else: curiosity. "You were dead," she said in accented but clear English. "I monitored the procedure myself. Cardiac failure, neural shutdown, cellular decay. You were dead for 37 minutes and 14 seconds. Rodriguez walked into the room, noting how the communication equipment flickered and died around him. "Yeah, dying's not as permanent as it used to be, at least not for my kind." "Your kind?" The technician stepped back, but she kept asking questions. "Are all humans capable of this resurrection?" "Not yet," Rodriguez said, his glowing eyes reflecting off the dead screens around them. "But they will be." He moved to the main console and placed his hands on the control surface. The dead technology came alive under his touch. But it was different now. The displays showed information that shouldn't have existed. Troop movements, fleet positions, classified research projects. The entire Zephyrian database was opening itself to him like a book. Interesting, he murmured, scrolling through files with his mind rather than his hands. You've been busy, haven't you? 17 human colonies attacked in the last month. 40,000 civilians dead. My people fighting with sticks and stones while you rain fire from the sky. The technician watched in horror as he absorbed decades of classified information in seconds. How are you accessing our networks? Our encryption is quantum level, impossible to break without the right key, Rodriguez finished. And death, it turns out, is a hell of a key. He turned from the console to face her fully. What's your name? Zixara, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Well, Zixara, you seem like a decent person for someone who works for genocidal maniacs, so I'm going to give you some free advice, he smiled, and the expression was both kind and terrifying. Start running. Your empire picked a fight with the wrong species, and it's about to learn why humans don't stay dead when they have something to live for. Alarms were blaring throughout the complex now. Rodriguez could hear the thunder of approaching troops, the whine of charging energy weapons, the rumble of heavy assault vehicles moving into position. The entire base was mobilizing to stop one man. It wouldn't be enough. Rodriguez walked back into the corridor and began making his way toward the surface. Each level brought new challenges: automated defense systems, squads of elite soldiers, experimental weapons pulled from research vaults. All of it failed against something that had moved beyond the normal laws of physics. On the 10th floor, they tried to collapse the entire corridor on him. Tons of reinforced concrete and twisted metal created a tomb that should have held anything short of a starship. Rodriguez walked through the debris like it wasn't there, the rubble parting around him like water. On the 7th floor, they hit him with a gravity weapon designed to crush asteroids. The energy field compressed the air around him until it should have collapsed into a microscopic point. Rodriguez stood in the center of the effect, completely unaffected, and crushed the weapon's power core with a gesture. On the 3rd floor, they tried psychological warfare, sonic disruptors that could shatter sanity, neural scramblers that had driven entire armies insane. Rodriguez listened to the cacophony with mild interest, then disabled the entire system by touching one speaker. This is command to all units, a voice crackled over the base's communication system. Target is approaching surface level. All personnel are to evacuate immediately. Repeat, full evacuation ordered. Orbital bombardment authorized in 10 minutes. Rodriguez paused in his ascent. Orbital bombardment meant they were willing to destroy their own base to stop him. That was progress. Fear was a good teacher, and the Zephyrian Empire was getting an education in what real terror looked like. He reached the surface as the first evacuation ships were lifting off. The base sprawled across several square miles of Xerion Prime's rocky surface, a fortress of gray metal and energy shields that had never fallen to enemy attack. Now its own defenders were fleeing like their lives depended on it. Which they did. Rodriguez walked across the landing pad toward the main command bunker, ignoring the plasma fire from defensive positions. The shots that hit him simply dissipated against his skin. The ones that missed left craters in the ground behind him. The command bunker was a pyramid of black metal, protected by enough firepower to hold off an entire fleet. As Rodriguez approached, every weapon in the complex opened fire simultaneously. The air became a solid wall of energy, bright enough to blind anyone watching from orbit. When the light faded, Rodriguez was still walking forward, completely untouched. The weapons continued firing for another 30 seconds before their power cores overloaded and exploded, leaving the bunker defenseless. General Thexmore was waiting inside, standing at attention in the bunker's main chamber. The Zephyrian officer was old by his species' standards, his gray skin marked with the scars of a dozen campaigns. Unlike his subordinates, he showed no fear as Rodriguez entered. "You're either brave or stupid," Rodriguez observed. "I am curious," Thexmore replied. "I have fought across the galaxy for 60 years. I have seen technology that defies understanding and creatures that should not exist. but I have never seen anything like you." Rodriguez nodded with something approaching respect. "You stayed to learn something. I stayed to understand what my empire has awakened." Thexmore gestured to a holographic display that showed the tactical situation across human space. Red markers indicated Zephyrian fleets. Blue ones showed human colonies under attack. "We are winning this war. Your people fight bravely. But they are outnumbered and outgunned. This conflict will be over within a year." "It was over the moment you tortured me to death," Rodriguez said quietly. "You just don't know it yet." He walked to the display and touched the control surface. The hologram changed, showing information that made Thexmore step backward in shock. Ship movements that weren't supposed to exist, energy signatures that defied known physics. And at the center of it all, a growing network of blue lights spreading across human space. "Every human who dies fighting your empire comes back," Rodriguez explained. "Not immediately and not without cost, but death isn't the end for us anymore. It's a transformation." Thexmore studied the display with growing horror. The reports from Kepler Station, the human ship that continued fighting after taking fatal damage, the colony garrison that kept resisting after being wiped out twice. "You're starting to get the picture." Rodriguez turned from the display to face the general. "Here's what happens next. I'm going to leave this base and return to human space. I'm going to tell my people what I've learned from your databases. Fleet positions, supply routes, weak points in your defenses, everything. And if I try to stop you?" Rodriguez smiled. "General, you've hit me with everything you have. Torture, execution, enough firepower to level a city. I'm still here. What exactly do you think you can do to stop me?" Thexmore was quiet for a long moment, his tactical mind processing the implications. "You're not just one enhanced human. You're the beginning of something new. Humanity's next evolutionary step," Rodriguez confirmed. "Your empire wanted to know what makes humans special. Well, congratulations. You just helped us find out." Outside, the orbital bombardment ships had arrived. Rodriguez could see them in the sky like new stars, their weapons charging for a strike that would turn the entire base into molten glass. "You might want to evacuate," he told Thexmore. "This is going to get messy." The general activated his personal teleporter, vanishing in a shower of sparks. Rodriguez stood alone in the command bunker as the first orbital strike began its descent from the sky. The beam of concentrated energy was hot enough to melt armor plating, bright enough to be seen from space. It struck Rodriguez directly, enveloping him in nuclear fire. For the second time in an hour, Marcus Rodriguez died. For the second time, death was only temporary. When the bombardment ended and the molten rock cooled, he stood in the center of a glass crater that had once been a military base. His uniform was pristine, his skin unmarked, his eyes glowing brighter than ever. Above him, the Zephyrian ships were already retreating, their crews finally understanding that they had awakened something beyond their ability to destroy. Rodriguez looked up at the fleeing vessels and spoke a single word that somehow carried across the vacuum of space, reaching every alien ear in the system. "Run." The word carried weight beyond its meaning. It carried the promise of retribution, the certainty of justice, and the terrifying knowledge that humanity had just stopped playing by the old rules. The Zephyrian Empire had tortured a human to death. Now they would learn what came after death for a species that refused to stay down. 3 months after the Xerion Prime incident, Admiral Sarah Chen received a message that should have been impossible. The transmission came through quantum channels that had been dark for weeks, carrying a voice she'd thought she'd never hear again. "Admiral, this is Staff Sergeant Rodriguez requesting permission to come aboard." Chen stared at the communication console in her ready room aboard the UEF Defiance, humanity's last remaining dreadnought. The ship was holding position in the Tau Ceti system, along with the scattered remnants of Earth's colonial fleet. 47 ships against the Zephyrian Empire's thousands. They were losing the war, and everyone knew it. "Marcus," she whispered, unable to believe what she was hearing. "We received reports that you were killed on Kepler Station 3 months ago." "Death's been overrated, Admiral. Permission to come aboard?" Chen looked out the viewport at the empty space between her ship and the nearest jump point. "Rodriguez, I don't see any transport ships out there. How exactly are you planning to—" A figure materialized on the bridge without any warning. No teleporter beam, no dimensional rift, no technological explanation whatsoever. One moment the space was empty, the next moment Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez was standing at attention in his dress blues, looking exactly as he had the day she'd sent him on what everyone assumed was a suicide mission. Except for his eyes. Those glowed with the same blue light that had been appearing in reports across human space, always connected to stories that sounded more like myths than military intelligence. "Reporting for duty, ma'am," Rodriguez said with a crisp salute. Chen stared at him for a long moment, her tactical mind trying to process what she was seeing. She'd known Rodriguez since he was a young corporal, had watched him grow into one of the finest non-commissioned officers in the Corps. She'd also read his after-action reports, the ones that painted pictures of impossible victories and soldiers who kept fighting after taking fatal wounds. "At ease, Marine," she said finally. "We need to talk." Rodriguez relaxed his stance, but remained standing. Around him, the bridge crew tried to pretend they weren't staring at a man who had just appeared out of thin air. "I know you have questions, Admiral. Everyone does. But first, you need to know what I've learned about the Empire, their fleet positions, their supply lines, their plans for the final assault on Earth." Chen gestured for him to continue, though part of her wondered if she was losing her mind. The war had been going badly for so long that perhaps she was finally cracking under the pressure. "The Empire's main fleet is massing in the Vega system," Rodriguez continued. 1,500 ships, including their new planet-killer weapons. They plan to jump to Earth in 2 weeks and end this war with a single devastating attack. "How could you possibly know that?" Chen asked. "Our intelligence networks have been dark for months." Rodriguez smiled, and the expression carried knowledge that went far beyond anything a staff sergeant should possess. "I spent some time in their databases. Turns out, death gives you access to information that the living can't reach." Before Chen could respond, her communications officer looked up from his station with confusion written across his face. "Admiral, I'm receiving reports from across the fleet. We're getting contact from personnel who were listed as killed in action. Dozens of them." "Impossible," Chen's executive officer said. "We confirmed those deaths ourselves." "Sir, I'm looking at Lieutenant Commander Park on my display right now," the communications officer replied. "She says she has tactical information about Zephyrian movements in the Centauri sector." Rodriguez nodded as if this was exactly what he'd expected. "They're all coming back, Admiral. Every human who died fighting the Empire. We're not the same as we were, but we're not gone." Chen activated the ship's main display, showing the tactical situation across human space. Red markers showed Zephyrian positions. Blue ones marked human forces. But now there were new markers appearing. Purple icons that seemed to move in ways that defied physics. "What are those purple contacts?" she asked. "Us," Rodriguez said simply. "The ones who came back. We're everywhere now, Admiral. In their computer systems, behind their lines, inside their most secure facilities. The Empire wanted to exterminate humanity. Instead, they just helped us evolve." As if to demonstrate his point, the main display flickered and changed. New information appeared. Real-time positions of every Zephyrian ship, detailed schematics of their weapons, even personal communications between their commanders. It was intelligence that should have been impossible to obtain. "How?" Chen breathed. "Death changes you," Rodriguez explained. It strips away the limitations that biology puts on consciousness. We can exist in their computer networks, travel through their communication systems, appear anywhere we need to be. The Empire created technology to torture and kill humans. Now that same technology serves as our highway system. Chen's tactical mind began to process the implications. You're saying that every human death has made our people stronger? Not just stronger, different. We're still human, still loyal to Earth and everything we've fought for. But we're also something new, something the Empire can't understand or fight. The communications officer spoke up again. Admiral, I'm receiving a priority transmission from Earth Defense Command. They're reporting massive system failures across the Zephyrian Advance Fleet. Ships are dropping out of formation, weapon systems are failing, entire battle groups are going dark. Rodriguez's smile grew wider. My friends have been busy. The Empire's fleet is very impressive, Admiral. All that advanced technology, all those sophisticated computer systems. It's almost like they built their entire military to be vulnerable to an enemy that could exist in their networks. Chen walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. For months, she'd been preparing for humanity's final defeat. Every report brought news of another colony lost, another fleet destroyed. Earth's children scattered across the galaxy had been falling one by one to an enemy that seemed unstoppable. But now, what are you asking me to do, Sergeant? She said quietly. I'm asking you to trust us, Admiral. Give us 48 hours and then take the fleet to Earth. The Empire's final assault is still coming, but when it arrives, they're going to find a very different war waiting for them. Chen turned back to face Rodriguez. And if I refuse? If I decide this is all some kind of enemy psychological warfare? Rodriguez's expression became serious. Then you'll watch the Zephyrian fleet destroy itself without understanding why. The war's already over, Admiral. The Empire just doesn't know it yet. For 48 hours, Admiral Chen waited. Her instruments showed chaos spreading through Zephyrian space like wildfire. Fleets disappeared from sensors only to reappear in completely different systems. Supply convoys vanished en route to their destinations. Communication networks crashed and rebuilt themselves with new parameters that made no sense. Most disturbing of all were the reports from Zephyrian survivors. The few who made it to neutral systems told stories of ships that fought themselves, computer systems that turned against their own crews, and human voices speaking from dead communication arrays. When the 48 hours were up, Chen gave the order to jump to Earth. They emerged from hyperspace to find the Zephyrian invasion fleet already in position around humanity's homeworld. 1,500 ships arranged in perfect battle formation, their weapons trained on the blue planet below. It was exactly as Rodriguez had predicted. It was also the most beautiful trap Chen had ever seen. All ships. This is Admiral Chen, she broadcast to her small fleet. Maintain position and observe. Do not engage unless directly fired upon. The Zephyrian formation was flawless, a textbook example of overwhelming force properly deployed. But as Chen watched, small things began to go wrong. A battleship's main gun rotated away from Earth to target another Zephyrian vessel. A carrier's fighter squadron launched and immediately began attacking their own fleet. Navigation systems failed across entire battle groups, sending ships careening into each other. Admiral, her sensor operator called out, I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the enemy fleet. It looks like they're fighting each other. But they weren't fighting each other. They were fighting the ghosts in their machines, the spirits of humanity's dead who had found a new way to serve their homeworld. Every human who had died in the war was there, existing in the quantum foam between real and virtual space, turning the Empire's own weapons against them. The Zephyrian fleet tried to retreat, but their navigation computers wouldn't respond. They tried to signal for reinforcements, but their communications arrays broadcast only silence. They tried to activate emergency protocols, but every system had been quietly subverted by an enemy that existed beyond their understanding. In the end, the mighty Zephyrian Empire died not in glorious battle, but in confused terror as their own technology became their executioner. Admiral Chen watched from the bridge of the Defiance as 1,500 enemy ships went dark, their crews either dead or fled in the few escape pods that still functioned. In a matter of hours, the greatest military force in galactic history had been reduced to floating scrap metal. "Rodriguez," she called out to the empty bridge, "I know you're listening. What happens now?" The air shimmered, and Rodriguez materialized beside her command chair. "Now we rebuild, Admiral. The Empire had colonies across dozens of systems, resources that can help Earth recover from this war. My people are already taking control of their infrastructure." "Your people?" "The dead who chose to stay dead," he clarified. "We're still human, still loyal to everything we fought for, but we exist in a different state now. We'll protect humanity's expansion into the galaxy. Make sure nothing like the Empire can threaten our species again." Chen nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You're becoming humanity's guardians, our protectors in the digital realm." "Something like that," Rodriguez agreed. "The galaxy's a big place, Admiral. Lots of threats out there, lots of species that might think humans look like easy targets. They're about to learn that we don't stay down when we're knocked down. We just come back stronger." On the main display, Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, surrounded by the wreckage of an empire that had thought it could extinguish humanity's light. But humans, Chen realized, were like stars themselves. Even when they died, their light continued to shine across the galaxy, touching everything in their path. The Zephyrian Empire had tortured a Marine to death, thinking they were demonstrating their power over humanity. Instead, they had just taught the human race that death was not the end. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez snapped to attention one final time, his glowing eyes reflecting the light of 10,000 stars. "Semper Fi, Admiral," he said, and faded away into the quantum realm where humanity's newest guardians watched over their living brothers and sisters. The war was over. Humanity had won, and they would never be defenseless again.